This is a recap video of week 5. Now, this past week you have been looking at Wesley's use of the language of Christian perfection. We've had some really good, healthy conversation going on the chat forum, and I've enjoyed reading your sermon reviews. It's a difficult question to wrestle with, the question of should we use this word perfect. And so if we're keeping ourselves in Wesley's context, the first thing that everybody did highlight is the fact that Wesley did use this word because it's a biblical word. Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. That's the first thing I'd like to recognize, that this is why Wesley used that word. And I think all of you have picked that one up as well. The next challenge, though, is what does the Bible mean by the word perfect? And what does Wesley mean by the word perfect? And a Hebrew understanding and a Greek understanding are slightly different. In terms of a Greek understanding, which we read in the New Testament, perfect does have the connotation of someone being flawless or blameless, pure, with nothing, no blemishes, nothing wrong with it. We think of a geometric figure that has perfect angles. There's nothing wrong with it. And if that's our perception of the word perfect, then yes, to be a perfect Christian is something that we think is completely unattainable. However, if we understood the word from a Greek perspective, or from a Hebrew perspective, my apologies, then we understand that the word is more focused on wholeness or completeness. So in this way, we are becoming a more complete Christian. Our Christian walk is becoming more fully like God. So it is a challenge to use the word perfect. One way that we need to approach this word, which many of you have picked up on, is understanding Wesley's theology of sin and how he defines sin. So he uses the language of a voluntary and involuntary sin. A voluntary sin is the common way of understanding sin. It's breaking a known law of God. And involuntary sin is something that we do because of our human nature. Because our human nature isn't perfect. Our physicalness isn't perfect. So we have lapse in memory, we have misunderstandings, we have infirmities is the word that he used. So for example, if you tell something that's untrue about someone, but that's based on a perception that you have of them. So my perception is that this person wore a blue dress yesterday because I thought I saw her in a picture and she was wearing a blue dress. And so I tell someone that she's wearing a blue dress. Well, that's actually a lie because she was wearing a green dress. Now, if I tell someone that this person was wearing a blue dress and it's a lie, that is sin, telling something that is not true. So what Wesley says is as a one on the journey of Christian perfection, when they realize what they've done, or when someone tells them what they've done, their immediate response is to ask for forgiveness, to apologize, and to recognize they're wrong. It's a relational thing, which brings me to the next point. The perfection Wesley's talking about is not sinless perfection, meaning we're incapable of sinning, and I think he's very clear on this. What he's saying is that there are voluntary sins and involuntary sins. And so a perfect Christian will not commit voluntary sins. If we know that it is wrong, we will not commit those sins. But there's still room for mistakes. And hopefully that helps you understand a bit better of his understanding of perfection. Now, one phrase that we often hear when it comes to living a Christian life is, if we make a mistake, we say, I'm only human. Well, in some ways that does fit Wesley's understanding of involuntary sins. It's our human nature which causes us to do these things. But for others, they would say that this is kind of a get-out clause, or a blame game. Well, I'm blaming my human nature on this. When actually we should reverse how we understand this and say, if I make mistakes, or if I commit sin, then I'm actually not human enough. By that we mean Jesus has come to restore this image of God within us. And so we're on a journey to become more like Jesus, restoring the image of God. And so when we make mistakes, we're actually not being human enough, because our full humanness, our complete, our whole humanness is seen in the life of Christ. And so think about that next time you say, well, I'm only human. Maybe you should say, I'm not human enough. I'm not Christ-like enough. And finally, and many of you did emphasize this, the issue is about love and about relationship. When we see Christian perfection as a goal, something that we strive for, we should be seeing this as a goal of perfect love. And that's a phrase that is often used. I've written to a few of you to say the phrase that Wesley preferred was love excluding sin is Christian perfection, or love excluding sin is perfect love. And this is the goal. Now, we can have plenty of discussions about whether it happens in a moment, whether it happens gradually, but actually I'm not as concerned about that as I am, what is the purpose, what is the point, what is the teaching of Christian perfection? It's wholeness, it's becoming more fully human, created in the image of God, and love is the key. So, well done dealing with a tough topic.